In prison, white men are feared more than black men. Do you know why?
Why?
Because everybody knows the white man did it.
I don't know
because
if that's that funny.
Trying to build a prison. What's going on, everybody? This is Thomas FreeMe. This is the Thomas FreeMe TV and Podcast Show, welcoming you back to yet another great discussion with a Mr. Marvin Cotton Jr. Marvin is an exoneree. He spent 20 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, had nothing to do with, a completely innocent man. And this is the discussion that we're going to have, is how you get caught up into that, how these circumstances happen to an individual, and then how do you deal with that? How do you deal with being incarcerated, away from your family, dealing with the life-to-life, the day-to-day, and just seeing things dissolve around you, all because of you being in prison, innocent. How do you deal with something like that? So these are the discussions we're going to get into. First and foremost, I pray that everybody is blessed. They're having a great day. It's deep, it's philosophical, and it's real. So this is what's going on in America. This is why I provide the channel that I do and the information that I do, so that we can educate ourselves on being better people, better citizens, so that we can unite and be a strong country, we the people. Enjoy the conversation, pay attention, listen to the message, and first and foremost, just give gratitude that this man is home, that he is not still sitting in prison trying to fight his innocence as many others are, and we're working on trying to get these people home too. So let me not ramble on anymore. Let's get right into the discussion, because I know you guys are probably already fast forwarded through all of this, which is cool. Enjoy the show. Take care of yourself. Be your best self. Mr. Marvin, Mr. Marvin, Mr. Marvin, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Man, thank you for coming on. I'm honored, man. I'm honored to have you on the show. First and foremost, I'm thankful that you're home, man, and you get to reestablish life for what it is now. I wanted to start this discussion with a joke that I heard not too long ago, and what the joke was that in prison, white men are feared more than black men. Do you know why?
Why?
Because everybody knows the white man did it. Now, I don't know how true of a statement that is,
I don't know if that's that funny.
But this is the thing, is that the context of the joke is that we all know the stigma. You understand
Right.
what I'm saying? We all know the facts and the truth, but yet still it's taken so long for things to fix itself.
Right. But
So
the thing about the justice system is, in prison, of course you have a lot of blacks, some of which should be there and some of which should not be there, some of which are over sentenced. You have the brown, that some of which should be there, some of which should not be there at all, and some of which are over sentenced. And when it comes to the whites, you don't see many rich white men in prison at all. You see poor white men. You see poor people in prison. So that's like the common thread that goes through the prison system. You see poor black, poor brown, and poor white. And I believe that I've met many innocent black, brown, and white men in prison. I've also met black, brown, and white men that have outgrown their crime and should no longer be there, because they're really exemplifying the potential that they had in them, and they've outgrown where they were at 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago.
Well, that's so true. And then you have individuals that are the same 20, 30
So,
years later.
or worse.
Or worse. Definitely, or worse. And I've seen that personally myself. Now, Me, I only did 13 years in the feds. That's the longest stretch that I've done. But I've been in and out.
Only? That's a lot of time, brother.
Well, it is. Any time in prison is a lot of time. But the reason why I bring that up is because it wasn't until I got to the feds, I'm thinking 13 years is a long, long time. Where I was sentenced to 17 and a half for a first time nonviolent drug offense, no dope. It was a ghost ship conspiracy. People were just telling on everybody, and I went to trial, and I ended up getting 210 months. And I'm thinking, like, this is a long friggin' time. But it wasn't until I got in there and started realizing that when I'm sharing my story with people, they're like, how the hell did you get that little bit of time for going to trial? You know what I mean? And we're getting 20 and 30 years, 40 years, 80 years, and it was then is, and that was maybe 3 or 4 years in fighting my case or whatnot, and seeing the discrepancies in just in the courts, as I'm doing my legal work, just going through, and I'm seeing, like, me and this guy's got the same exact charge. It's the same exact scenario almost, but this person got 50 years, and I started seeing that. So the question is, because you brought up a great point, and this is a point that I really want people to really stress and understand, the fine line between racism and classism. And you brought up a great point, So in your opinion, your 20 years of masterful experience of prison life, what is your opinion?
Well, we know that this country was built through racism. It was built through slavery, and a lot of the thinking that went into the construction of this company made its way into every system of this country. So 300-400 years later, nature of that thing. And although you have a lot of good people that works in these systems were set up with certain ideas in mind. So we know that the justice system is one of the major pillars in this country. And it is disproportionately and wrongfully used against Black and brown and poor whites, specifically with Blacks being 13-14% of this nation's population, but nearly 50% of this nation's prison population. Those numbers don't add up. I don't care how you cut it. Those numbers do not add up. So we know that wrongful convictions, like, I'm from Michigan, and there's been 31 guys exonerated in approximately like the last 3 years. About 27 are Black. It's not that, white men are not, filling out these applications and trying to get the conviction integrity unit and some of these universities to look at their case. But in a lot of the cases where you see police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, it is disproportionately aimed at Black and brown. And then if you happen to be poor on top of that, you get a different slice of the justice system than everybody else. That's just that's the reality of it. Now, I know me saying that, a lot of people can relate. But what I found, like, in this space, your voice saying the exact same thing is a lot louder than mine, because people have to really come to terms and listen to you. Like, okay, this is a white man speaking this cold, dry truth, and you've seen it. You spend time in a federal prison. You spent time in the federal prison. What did that population look like? What's the percentages in that population? And I'm only asking that as it relates to our criminal justice system. Like you said, you met people with the exact cases as yours, but they receive 3 times more time than you. Where did you see that most often at? You have the real life experience of prison. You know, should you have even gotten the time that you've gotten? Probably not. If you were rich, would you have even been to prison?
Well, this is why I want people to understand that when you get charged, when you get indicted, you have two classifications, if you will. I'm probably saying this wrong. I would need my attorney to really break this down, but you have two sentencing factors. You have one that is incarceration, to say you do the time, or you have a fine. And they both amount to the same equal justice in their eyes. You could either pay this fine, which is, in my case, was like, I think $5 million or something equivalent to that, or spend X amount of time in prison that equates to that dollar amount. This is how these people factor these things in, you know, but I agree with everything that you're saying, and you're saying it so articulately that the people, I feel, can really try to see what it is that we're saying. And I feel like, yes, a large proponent of the prison population is Black and brown, just as our poor communities are, because Black and brown has been left behind for 400 years. Where else would you expect them to be but other than the poor community trying, you know, fighting and gnashing and just trying to survive? So these poor communities are the ones that are being ravished with these conspiracy charges and these bogus charges that you're allowing these psychopathic cops just to come in and just, because these cops aren't in the rich neighborhoods. They know that these people are crazy and they're sending, but they need power. They need numbers. They need force. So they have to take in what they can. It's kind of like when Uber came out and they were just bringing in all the drivers they could. And what ended up happening? People were being robbed, raped from the Uber drivers. So they had to cut back. It's the same principle. They need force.
And I think one of the unintended consequences of the prison system is, I don't believe in the beginning they intended for it to be an industry the way that it is. You know, I believe that it was, you know, initially meant to kind of control and control and punish and, you know, marginalize. But I don't believe that they thought it would grow into an industry like General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, because the Department of Corrections, that's what it is. It is an industry where a lot of people eat from that plate, they eat from that table. So talking about justice and rolling back some of the illegal and unconstitutional tactics that's practiced by our government, its officials, and its agents, talking against that, that's a problem, because there's a lot of people that eat from that table.
Well, yes, but you know, it's my understanding from my studies and my research of how all of this crap started was, we know as when slavery was coming to an end, was at the height of the steel world, right? We were building faster, industrializing faster than any other nation in the world. And a large population of that building was slaves. And so when Abraham Lincoln ended slavery, you just cut out almost the whole workforce of all of this. And they had to keep that workforce going. So they devised a plan to keep the Black man enslaved through peonage, right? They created a system of peonage where if you didn't have a job, you would go to prison. If a Black man didn't have a job, if anybody didn't have a job, they would go to prison, but no Black men were being hired. So they're going to prison in order to pay off that debt. And where were they putting them? On the railroad. So again, I say that I'm a proponent for reparations, and I'm a proponent that these industries, some of them that you named, need to start giving a portion to the Black community, because if it wasn't for the Black community and the prison complex system, these companies wouldn't be who they are, especially along the whole Sun Belt. You know how many people died building these multi-billion-dollar industries now? The stories are horrendous. And the thing of it is they would work us to death. Marvin, they would work us 16, 18 hours until we died, literally in the bunk, and they would take us out and replace us and work that person the same way and throw us out back down here in Florida. We're finding there's so many graveyards that are being found down here of black people, black graveyards that they've built houses on, buildings on, just unmarked graves they're finding down here in Florida. So it's crazy, but it's the truth. Like you and I say what I say because it's facts. And if I'm going to be a man of truth within myself, to be closer to God, because that's my ultimate position. I don't give a damn what Billy Bob is saying down the road. You ain't got nothing to do with my afterlife. So why the hell am I listening to you? You see what I'm saying? It's what I know to be truth, and I'm going to speak it as I see it. And it just is what it is. And we have to fix it. And we have to be honest about where this came from, because as we're going to get into now in your story, you as Marvin Cotton have one life, and you've given a third of that to these people for something that you didn't even do.
Yes, sir.
Temujin Kinsu up there in Michigan, 37 years, and his trial is ridiculous. His attorney was on crack, working with undercovers, setting up crack. The whole thing is what they call in legal terms a kangaroo court, and he's still in prison.
Okay. And we're praying and we're hoping, and I'm a big advocate of him. I'm hoping that case is resolved soon.
So tell me about who Marvin Cotton, the boy, was. Who was you as a child? Who did you want to be growing up? What were some of your dreams and things of that nature?
Well, I grew up in Detroit. I was born and raised in Detroit. A single mother, my father, chasing drugs and addictions. So I learned early on that, I didn't want to be a drinker or a smoker. Seeing his example actually taught me in reverse to where I knew what I didn't want to be. So I was kind of immune to peer pressure growing up. All of my friends are drinking and smoking weed and, marijuana, and it never fazed me. I didn't mind being the only person, in my circle that wasn't indulging. However, growing up in the streets of Detroit, I grew up in a real rough neighborhood. I was a street guy. I was pretty heavy into the streets. I dropped out of school in the 12th grade. Getting deeper and deeper into the streets. I think I always had a good heart. I just didn't have the guidance or the knowledge to really do what I wanted to do. So I did what I knew. I did what I grew up around. Had a bit of an ego, and I think my ego actually started some things for me where I had some conflict with some police officers. They broke in my house. They broke in my house one day, and they were looking for a gun that somebody had stole from a police officer. A friend of mine had stole some guns, broke in the police officer house, stole some guns. I didn't know anything about that, but he brought one of the guns to me, and he sold me the gun. I ended up taking the gun and selling it to somebody else. So when the police found out who broke in their house, they went and kidnapped him. All this was off the record. It wasn't like they followed any official channels in order to investigate, the missing guns or anything. I think he stole like 6-7 guns from them, but they were only interested in finding this one, the one that he had brought to me. Mm-hmm. And when they came to my house, they ended up, coming in and looking for this gun, and they tore up everything. And of course, me, being a street guy, I'm sticking to those rules. Like, I don't have a gun. I don't know what you're talking about. And if y'all gonna arrest me. I had enough knowledge at that point to know that they wasn't supposed to be in my house without a warrant. So I'm like, take me to jail, because I knew that they probably couldn't.
How old
I
was
kind
you?
of knew. I was 20 years old.
20. Okay.
Yeah, I was 20 years old. And so they stayed there for a few hours, tearing stuff up, and took some things of mine. They didn't find the gun. Of course, I didn't tell them who I sold the gun to, but they left me their card and said, listen, go get the gun. We give you $1,000 for the gun back. We give you $1,000 for the gun. I know that the gun wasn't worth that. So I knew that they really wanted this gun. Maybe, it can be traced back to them in some kind of way. And they didn't want that. So my ego, I went and filed a complaint, and I used the card that they gave me in order to file the complaint with the Internal Affairs. I didn't know at the time that complaint was going to really snowball and turn into something huge, because the officers that broke in my house, they were pretty high ranking police officers with the Northwest of Detroit raid team. So they were like sergeants and pretty high ranking detectives. And Internal Affairs got involved. That ball started rolling, and eventually officers were indicted behind breaking into my house. But in between them being indicted and them breaking into my house, the harassment started. I was being arrested for no reason. I was being picked up for no reason. They would arrest me, let me go, arrest me, keep me for a couple of days, let me go.
They're
arrest
on you. Yeah.
Like
watching everything you're doing.
I couldn't do anything. They see my car somewhere, they own me. We got to the point where I just started running. I'm not doing nothing, but I'm running.
So let me ask you, because in this is serious now, because in that mental landscape that you're in, every day you're waking up knowing that you have police following you, on you, right? And you're trying to move throughout every day of your life as just anxious, anxiety, over your shoulder, looking over your shoulder, and things of that nature, because of these cops that are constantly trying to bust you for something.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like they were trying to pin anything on you?
I thought they were going to kill me. I never thought that they were going to pin something on me. I thought they were going to kill me. One thing police officers that's, they know how to do, whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, they know how to put pressure on people. That's like, and they train and they know how to keep the pressure up. And they kept the pressure up on me, even though I wasn't doing anything. They were just mad that I filed this complaint. But they was ramping the pressure up. So in my mind, I'm like, they're going to try to kill me. So my mind went there. My mind didn't go to, as soon as they got an opportunity, they would influence or put a case on me.
Let's get into exactly, now that we have that and we have that understanding, the occurrence, the day of the occurrence. So what happened on this day?
Well, in 2001, January 24th, 2001, a friend of mine was murdered. And the about 3 weeks later, after he was murdered, the police picked me up. I call it kidnapping, but they picked me up and took me down to the police station and, questioned me. I was taught, early in life, you never talk to the police whether, you did something or not. And I hadn't done anything, but I, didn't answer any questions or talk to him or anything like that. I never thought that I would be charged for the murder of somebody that I was cool with, for the murder of somebody that I was friends with. And, we hung out and hung with, with women and got money together and everything. And maybe a couple of days, 2 or 3 days after I was arrested, I was charged with first-degree murder. Now, the things that led up to me being charged, the prosecutors star witness, for lack of better words. He had made a few different statements. His name's Kenneth Lockhart. He had made a few different statements, and his initial statements, statements, he never said anything about me. He never said my name. He never implicated me in any type of crime or anything. But 3 weeks later, he did. Now, for your listeners, in Michigan, there's a new unit in the prosecutor office called the Conviction Integrity Unit. I'm out of Wayne County. So what the Conviction Integrity Unit did, the prosecutor's office, is when they reopened my case, they started investigating every single component. One of the things that they discovered was that this star witness, Kenneth Lockhart, the information that he put on his statement, they got the warrant, got me arrested, got me sent to trial. The information that was used, the homicide detective actually gave him that information after he went and got this information from some drug dealer who got the information from Lord knows who. So you have, third, fourth party.
Hearsay on top of hearsay.
Absolutely. And they went and took this information to this witness. And this is what they use. Now, I hired a private investigator many years ago, and one of the things that he was able to get on recording, he recorded the lead investigator without the lead investigator knowing he was being recorded. In fact, the lead investigator didn't even know that the private investigator worked for me. He was under the impression that the private investigator was working for the prosecutor's office. And so he talked freely. And he told the lead investigator that he was investigating the case, and that I was hiring lawyers and I was in a good position in order to get out of prison. And he was trying to stop that. And the lead investigator just talked freely. And one of the things that he said was, this witness didn't know anything. This witness didn't see anything. So we had to do what we had to do. So one of the things that they did was he went and got, this gossip from this drug dealer, and then took that back to the witness and had the witness put it in his statement as if it was firsthand knowledge from himself. And that's what they use. So, that information, that sequence of events, didn't come from me. This sequence of events comes from the prosecutor office, the same office that prosecuted me.
Well, how was you found guilty, though? You went to trial?
Absolutely. Now, that information wasn't known before trial. That information is like literally
from the that's what the CIU turned up.
Right. That's what
is it fair to say that the CIU is the reason why you're sitting here in front of me?
Absolutely. And another piece of evidence that was used against me was a jailhouse informant. I don't like to call him a jailhouse informant, of course, because that suggests that he actually had something to inform, but his whole statement and his whole testimony was fabricated. But he recanted all these years later, and come to find out that he too got information from detectives in order to come in and testify against me. So the case against me was manufactured and really manipulated through law enforcement.
Yay. Jesus, man. And this is why I stayed my ass in Florida. Florida's not too much better, but Michigan.
I had a four-headed monster. You have an off-duty police officer in my case. So you have off-duty police officer whom, by all intents and purposes, was a suspect. You have the lead investigator, which I just told you about. You also had a detective in my case that was convicted several months after my trial for 13 counts of bank robbery. And then you had another detective in my case that's been sued on multiple occasions. They have DUIs, was forced to retire, got caught with an illegal gun. He's a police officer, got caught with an illegal gun. And, these are the officers and detectives that I had involved in my case.
Well, let me ask this as sort of a time reference. So all the harassment that you was getting from the cops, how frequent was that leading into this murder? I mean, was you still being harassed like every day from these cops leading into the murder, or did it back off some? Or
well, I filed a complaint. I complained a few times, but I filed a second complaint, and that actually stopped the harassment. It got quiet. It got unusually quiet, but the harassment lasted months and months. It started in the summer of 2000. I was arrested and charged early the next year in 2001.
How did you feel, Marvin, knowing that you had nothing to do with murdering your best friend? Well, not your best friend, but a good friend. But did you feel like you were just in a position that was unwinnable?
It felt like a dream. It felt you're very
surreal.
numb when you're very numb when reality takes such a shift that your faculties can't even compute what's going on. Like what? So you don't really know how you feel in those moments because it's so fuzzy. It's so numb. Just like when they introduced the jailhouse informant in my case, that was 4 days before trial. They introduced him 4 days before trial. So, those moments I can only distinguish, being charged, going to trial, finding out about the jailhouse informant, even being released. I can only describe those moments as like a numbness that it's hard for you to really really connect with reality because it's so overwhelming and so unreal, like what's going on. But when they introduced the jailhouse informant, growing up in the neighborhood, you expect for police to use certain tactics. So being charged, although I was numb, after a while, after I got off into the fight, I kind of understand. Okay, I kind of understand why they coming at me. I understand why they want to hurt me. But when they start doing things like, when I start hearing testimony from witnesses, I'm like, hold on, this is so unreal that now I see that they're willing to do anything in order to put me in prison or do anything to win.
Anything.
So imagine yourself, and your viewers, imagine yourself being in already an impossible situation, and all of the people that's holding all of the power and all of the pieces, they already in a position of power, but yet they're cheating and then preventing you from even putting forth the very best defense that you can. So how I felt in those days probably has really grown me into the man that I am today. But man, I can't even put it into words because at a certain point, how do you describe pain? At a certain point, like, how do you put a certain level of pain and hurt and disbelief into words?
Well, thank you, Marvin, for sharing that. And like you and me and so many of us, when we try to explain this experience, we stutter, we grasp for words because, like I explained to my viewers, trying to explain this type of experience is like a Holocaust survivor trying to explain their experience, or a person that's been in slavery trying to explain what slavery is like. A person, you just cannot grasp the amount of pressure and stress, and as you said, we're just floating. The week before, because halfway through my trial, I knew that I didn't stand a chance. Just everything that you just said, I knew halfway through trial, these people are getting up on the stand, lying, making up whatever they wanted to make up. people I've never even seen before in my life up here talking about I'm at a party filled with people and I'm handing them garbage bags filled with cocaine and just the craziest stuff. And I'm just sitting there, like you said, and I have to just sit there at this table and be like, I'm looking at, can he say that? Lawyers like, no, it's okay. Are you going to object? There's no objection right now, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's my own fault because I'm ignorant, of the law, but trying to explain that the week before my trial, everything's going to be okay. But I was just on a cloud. I didn't hear anything. Everything was like Charlie Brown, won't.
Absolutely.
I didn't feel, know anything. All I knew was, man, I'm going to prison. You know what I mean? I'm going to prison and I can't stop this. Like, I don't want to be on this train no more and it's not stopping. And you're sitting in this room listening to these white people, right? Just sit here and talk about me in such a degrading fashion. You know what I mean? And it was all because I essentially came from the hood. And they were painting a picture that I should have known better. The detectives are getting up there talking about, the prosecutor asked, when the first time you heard Thomas's voice, what did you think? Oh, the first person I thought of was Eminem, and how he acts and things. And this is what they're saying. And so this is the picture. This was 2003 when I went to trial. So they're painting this picture of me just being a white kid in a place that I didn't belong. You see what I'm saying? And it's just trying to get people to understand that you did a better job articulating it than me. You really did. And it's something that people cannot fathom,
And the long-term effects, the long-term effects of experiencing trauma like that, pain like that, is it disconnects you to where, I don't grieve properly now. I'm so disconnected from things sometimes that, I could be in a room full of people that's, drowning in sorrow. And I can't connect with that, because I was in an environment where I had all of this unjustified things coming at me. And I had to find a way to numb that. So now when I'm in normal environments where it should be okay to grieve and cry and experience life as it is, it's difficult to do.
And you don't have to do it. I mean, it's just, and again, these are some of the pressures that life puts on us because we're expected to feel a certain way. And when we don't feel that way, we tend to think that something is wrong with us. And it's just not that way. We just have different experiences. And it's just like you said, I've seen people stabbed to death in front of me. So when you're sitting here talking about your cut, I'm sorry, but it's, I'm sure it hurts and we'll fix it up or whatnot. But what do you want? I've seen, so right. It's dealing with that interaction. It's like I just had a conversation with on another podcast, and we were talking about PTSD, and we were talking about PTSD in the military. These guys, these soldiers coming home, and it's like I said, but it's different. In the military, your PTSD is more dealing with the unknown. You don't know when what you're seeing going on around you is going to happen to you. It could happen to you at any moment. Your next step, you could stay. So that PTSD is not only seeing that, but the pressure and the stress of knowing you could be next. In prison, as I explained, I have in my cell a 6'5", 280-pound white dude that's been on meth his whole life. And his brain is just fried out, and he's schizophrenic, and he's been off his pills for 3 days. And he's talking about he's hearing somebody is out to kill him. And I know he carries shanks on him all the time. So it's that kind of PTSD, him jumping on me and knowing that this dude is out of his mind in this moment. How the hell am I going to get this guy up off me? That kind of PTSD. And you and I deal with that all day, every day for years on years on years on years, not no one tour, two tours.
Right.
In your case, 20 years. So how was your experience? Now you're going from a shift. Again, this is something that people don't understand. You're going from this haze of cloud that you've been in, just this spiral of events that happen so quickly that you can't even comprehend what's happening to your life, to being thrown in prison, a maximum security, I'm sure, for your charge at how old? 20 years old?
Yeah, 21 at that time.
Explain this to me, man. Explain me your thought process.
Being in that type of environment, you have expectations, like you described somebody being stabbed to death in front of you. One of the expectations of your peers around you. I've seen people get stabbed so many times I couldn't even count, but you're sitting in a chow hall or the dining room eating, and somebody gets stabbed in front of you. You still got to eat your food or you're going to be hungry that night.
And it's not like you can just jump up and say, oh my God, somebody get help. He's being stabbed over here. You just have to sit there and be Stonewall.
Because there's an expectation for you to mind your business.
Amen.
There's an expectation for you not to help. Don't get in their business. You don't know what's going on.
Amen.
So there's a lot of different expectations that is anti-human, that is forced on you. I think that PTSD, there should be a separate diagnosis for the people that have done long-term prison time, because it is different, like you said. But being in prison and being innocent was something that was on my mind every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Not dying in prison, never having established a legacy that would live longer than me, dying in prison, and all my daughter has ever known is me being in prison, dying in prison about a ramen noodle soup or about nothing. Those things are on your mind all the time. But every time that I experience some sort of adversity, some sort of, unpleasant experience, whether it's with officers or whatever, some unjustified, struggle or difficulty, always like, here I go dealing with something that I shouldn't even be dealing with at all. But I can't react a certain way because I don't even want to look like somebody that belongs here. So my struggle was different. Now, I spent 20 years in prison. It's been, I've had to get busy on many occasions. I don't care how disciplined you are or how you're trying to do your time. You do 20 years in prison, you're gonna mix it up. In that 20 years, you're in an environment where, everybody is not in their right frame of mind. Prison is the place where all the bullies are. It's filled with bullies. It's filled with a lot of people that got an angle. Like, you may get approached several times a day, every single day, with someone with an angle with something. Sometimes you may benefit, sometimes you may not, but so when you're in that type of environment where you're surrounded by desperation, you're surrounded by the bullies, you're surrounded with people that couldn't function in a normal social environment, so they found themselves in prison. Mm-hmm. Whether you're supposed to be there or not, you're gonna clash with people that wakes up with intentions on clashing with anybody.
Amen. And that's a very good point. So on that, let me ask you, what is your culpability in all of this, Marvin? How, after, if you have, which I can tell that you're a man of reflection, so You definitely have men of reflection behind you. So reflecting upon maybe why your life is in this position, have you ever came to self at the end of the day and at the end of the road? Does it all boil down to the decisions that you were making as a kid, as a teen, and just putting yourself in certain positions in life?
Well, as it relates to this case, I don't believe I have any culpability. However, I do regret not being well studied, not being able to defend myself. Like you said, being in the courtroom and not knowing the law. I spent many years beating myself up for not knowing as much as the crooked police officers that devised schemes that affected 20 years of my life. So I spent many years beating myself up, especially about stuff that I was learning. The years are going by and I'm learning stuff like, had I known this back then maybe I wouldn't be sitting in prison right now if I known that they couldn't do this. Had I known this piece of information that they had hidden, if I knew about the Freedom of Information Act request, that I probably could have started early on. If I knew that after 30 days they destroyed 911 tapes, if I could have got this 911 tape when I was sitting in the county jail, would that have made a difference? So I beat myself up on a lot of things that I did not know, that I believe certain knowledge would have helped me expose the truth many years earlier. But would I be the man that I am today had I exposed the truth 10 years earlier or 15 years earlier, or never having gone through a trial to test me? And never having gone through a prison experience that tested me, never having to fight all of those battles in the Court of Appeals, in the Supreme Court, in the federal court, in the Federal Circuit Court. Had I not fought those battles, went through that stress, climbed those mountains, learned how to read in prison, had I not gone through that, would I be able to help people like I'm helping people today? Would I be able to stand tall? Would I be the man that I am today? Or would I have died in the streets, not having a legacy, not being even worth putting a face on a T-shirt? So I appreciate the things that I've gone through in order to end up right here.
Amen.
The struggle that God gave me, I appreciate it. The struggle that he gave me to be an example for others, I appreciate it. I take that. I can carry that cross. I've carried it.
Amen.
But
and
responsibility.
That's you hit it on the head, and that's kind of what I'm talking about is just culpability of self, not so much as the event that occurred, but just all the decisions that we've made out of ego, out of selfishness, out of materialism, out of emotions that lead us into these dark alleys of life for things to happen to us or around us, and it's like me when I reflected on mine, and it's like, for the longest I blamed the prosecutor, I blamed the snitches, I blamed everybody, but at the end of the day, I chose to be in the street. I chose to sell drugs. I chose to put myself in the lion's den, and you hit it on the head because of lack.
Now, from a moral standpoint, I agree with you 100%.
Right.
But from a legal standpoint,
no, I'm talking about
being in the streets didn't justify them overcharging you or lying in order to get a conviction,
100,
or charging you with something that they should never have charged you with.
Well, what it is,
they still have an ethical duty to do the right thing, to do the truthful thing.
Amen. And they don't. Right. And that's the thing is that the point is you're doing so well and helping me make my point is that you and I, and so many of us, because of the oppressive state that our government puts on us, the poor, we are making emotional, irrational decisions our whole lives until we make that consciousness, until we come into consciousness that we're making these irrational decisions because of the oppressive state that the government puts on its poor people. And it allows them to take advantage of our trauma, our abuse that we've had growing up, and the mistakes that we've made. I was breaking into houses at 13 years old. And not only was I just breaking into houses, but I was a mastermind at it at 13. I'm planning these things out. And I did like 20 houses, 18 houses, some crazy thing. And it wasn't that I was a criminal. I was just a kid. And I was just looking for attention, and I didn't, no matter what I was doing as a kid, I just wasn't being noticed. And I got into this. And that didn't make me a criminal, but yet the system took advantage of me. That did not try to help me. And as you said, you were a troubled kid. You got into issues, and there was no system in place to spot that and help that before an incident occurred that resulted you, because of your what do you say, your reputation with the police or whatever, resulted in you going to prison for 20 years of your life as an innocent man that had nothing to do with this crime whatsoever. So, but like you said, it's the education. It was the not knowing that what they were doing wasn't right, not knowing how to research properly. I'm guilty of that as well. I'm guilty of not knowing. I'm guilty of being completely ignorant through my trial, and I feel that I probably could have beat my trial if I would have been a little bit more educated. So my culpability falls in the fact that I was just ignorant of so many things. And that's what helped me become unignorant in prison and change, because I did not want to be ignorant, and I didn't see myself as an ignorant person, but yet I was doing ignorant things.
My initial fuel that I really used to grow in prison was I didn't want the team of people that use lies to be able to outthink me with lies. So that really fueled me to learn as much truth as I could, learn as much procedure as I could, to learn, even to this day. I've been out over a year now, and I'm still trying to figure out things about this case that was hidden or I didn't know. I'm still trying to figure things out about this case. The Conviction Integrity Unit, led by Valerie Newman, which is the director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in Wayne County under the leadership and prosecutor Kim Worthy. They found out a lot. They were able to really use their unlimited resources pretty much. They have, in comparison to somebody like me, be able to hire a lawyer and private investigator, they was able to bring their talent and find out a lot. But I know it's still more there. And since I started off trying to figure things out, I've been out of prison over a year, and I'm still trying to figure things out. Because that led to my freedom, finding out truth, finding out things that were hidden. There were the prosecutor office, they outlined 12 different Brady violations in my case. And those are just the ones that they were able to find, or the ones that made it into the recommendation. And for your viewers that don't know what a Brady violation is, you almost have to have some sort of either be a lawyer or have spent time in prison to know what a Brady violation is. But a Brady violation is where they hide favorable evidence or evidence that you could have used in your own defense from you. So when they turn over your file to your attorneys with all of the things in the case, anything that they withhold, especially things that they withhold that you could have used as a defense, they didn't turn over. That's what a Brady violation is. And in my case, they pointed out at least 12 things. I believe it's more because, don't know everything. I'm still trying to figure things out. But that's a lot. Cases get overturned for one Brady violation.
Well, sure. Absolutely. I'm dealing with that now in another case out of Mississippi with an individual who they withheld DNA evidence clearing him of this murder until he pled out. They were applying the pressure on him. They had his wife down at the station in handcuffs. They're saying that they were going to take his children away unless he just pled out to this manslaughter. He pled out to it, knowing that they had DNA evidence clearly showing that he wasn't involved in this case. And now this is the kicker now. So now when he's trying to get in, you already know how hard it is to get in on appeal when you plead. It's 99% impossible. But he got in, and under the argument that the date of the DNA was 4 days before his plea, they're saying that he was aware of that. They're saying that it was given to him, he was aware of it, and he still chose to plea. But it's like, to me, when is the court going to sit back? When would a judge sit back and say, you know what? That's just irrational to me. Why, young man, would you want to plead to a manslaughter that you know you're not guilty of, and you know there's DNA evidence that clears you? Why would you want to plead to that? There's none of that. They're like, okay, he wants to plea. All right, see you later. And now he's stuck in prison. He's been in prison 9 years on a 20-year charge. But this is rampant. It happens. This is not exclusive. It's not exclusive to you or to Mujin or a small percentage. It's like they're doing it to whoever they can get away with, and it may not even be that this person is innocent. Yeah. Maybe he's guilty, but they're just stacking charges on him.
It's a culture of, in the judicial system, the criminal justice system, there's a culture of, win by any means. The prosecutors are supposed to be champions of justice. And justice, cuts straight down the middle. It may cut you and it may not cut you. And if it doesn't cut you, a prosecutor shouldn't be trying to slant the blade in order to cut you as if that's justice. And in America, there's a culture of, we got our favorite football teams, we got our favorite basketball teams, our favorite baseball teams, you got your favorite sorority, you got your favorite political party. What city you from? My city better than yours. What state you from? My state better than yours. What kind of car you drive? I drive a GM. That Ford ain't nothing. There's a culture of
narcissism
in America. Mm-hmm. And in the criminal justice system, justice is supposed to cover every American. If you do something wrong, you get cut by that blade, that judicial blade coming down. That's
blind justice.
That absolutely is blind. And if you do nothing wrong, you should not get cut. You should not suffer the consequence that is not yours. But in America, prosecutors are taking sides. And the prosecutor wants to be on the winning side, the numbers. They want to get the numbers. They want to get the convictions. Well, this person didn't do it. Well, okay. Well, he still got to plead out to something. We have reduced it. No, why would you want to plead to somebody, plead a case that you know they didn't do it, but you want to keep the conviction? Mm-hmm. You want them to walk away on probation, opposed to throwing the entire case out because or a police officer does something wrong or evidence wasn't collected right. Instead of doing what the law requires you to do, you're still trying to find a way to keep the number. And that's a problem in our culture. We pick numbers. We choose money over life and liberty. We choose the frivolous, the things that won't matter in 100 years over the things that matters forever.
Mm. You're absolutely correct. And this is the same message I preach, is the narcissism of our country, man. And I believe I believe media is doing this to us. I believe technology is doing this to us because there's no proper training. And I believe that it's the agenda, because we can't have a nation of 330 million united Americans. We can't have that. The government can't have that. Right. So they have to keep division. They have to keep the United States divided into groups, small pockets that they could manage. And they do that in so many different ways, as you articulated, through sports, you know what I mean? Through cities, just through all of this marketing that they put out there, and so many different ways, fashion wise, keeping up with the Joneses. Everything is making us think that materialism is important in our lives before anything else.
As Americans, we have to determine what's important to us. We really have to take a look, because if we continue in the direction that things are going, what condition would this country, be in? What kind of country are we passing to our grandchildren, our great grandchildren? So we have to unify. At the very least, we have to unify around what is right. What is right? What are those things that every American should have? I think the founders did a great job in constructing the Constitution. But that has to be equally applied to everyone. And if you find yourself, and I'm not being accusatory to anyone, but if you find yourself denying someone their constitutional rights, and thinking that you should enjoy yours, but they shouldn't enjoy theirs, then you've fallen on the wrong side of being an American. You grew up in the neighborhood. You see the way police interactions are in the community. Constitutional rights, what? You better not even use the word Constitution in an interaction with a police officer in the hood, especially if there's no camera phone around. 3 or 4 of your rights may get violated right then. You don't have freedom of speech in an interaction with police, which you're supposed to. They say what they want to say, which they're not supposed to have freedom of speech when they had that uniform on. Because that uniform, the Constitution isn't for the government. It's a restraint on the government for the people. The Constitution belongs to the people. The government is supposed to defend it as it relates to what's best for the people. So we have freedom of speech. They don't, not while they have that uniform on.
Representatives.
The right, absolutely. So the rights that are afforded there is for the people.
No, I mean, that's exactly it. And this is, I'm so glad that you said that, because this is what the people have to understand. Exactly what Marvin said. What I've been saying is it's our fault. It's nobody's fault but our fault. And how it's our fault is because none of us hardly even know what the Constitution is. You know what I mean? We know that we have rights. We throw, I have rights. I have rights. Okay, well, what rights do you have? Do you really know what your rights are? And most people can't get past that question. So it leads to the police violating us constantly. It leads to the courts violating us constantly, because our government is on its own agenda and they're keeping us distracted away from our rights. This is one of the things I get into immigration about, because you have individuals that are coming here from other countries, right, that are in most parts socialistic countries. And these people have been raised and grown in a socialistic mindset, and they're coming here without understanding what the true essence and nature of what our Constitution is. So like you said, you'll have somebody saying, don't want this person to explore their rights, but they want their rights to be respected, but they don't even understand that they're violating somebody's rights. You don't even understand that you're violating somebody's rights, essentially, when you block somebody on social media. This is what's driving us to do that. You know what I mean? Because we get in the habit of, oh, you know what? I don't like what this person said. Block. See you later. And I
Right.
don't
We
even have to.
definitely living in a cancel culture.
Cancel culture. And that's the
We're definitely
narcissism
living in a
within
cancel
us.
culture.
That's the narcissism within us. Technology done that to us. It got us used to blocking people when we don't like what they say and shutting people down when we don't like what they say. You know, and I'm going to post on the video, but the Twitter, you know, and I want to deal with some of that as well, because you've been home a year now and you've been speaking a lot. Like, you're a busy dude. You know what I'm saying? So amidst of all of that, you're still, even though what you've been through and all you're doing is just speaking your experiences, you still get hate. How
Yeah. You know, some of the things I love to do, I speak at a lot of universities, and I love to speak to the students. I love because I speak to a lot of law students, and I know that they're getting ready to go off into an arena where they're going to be, turning the wheels of the system. So I love to be able to really connect with them before they get tainted in the system. So I'm talking about that, like my fulfillment comes from doing that right there.
Mm.
Um, um, I get a lot of hate, and I'm okay with that because I know it
Mm.
has nothing to do with me. The way somebody feels and the way somebody looks at me, I know it has nothing to do with me, but everything to do with them. I don't give a lot of attention to the hate, um, um, because I wouldn't be able to do all the things that I'm doing now if I divide my energy, or pull over to everything I see as I'm traveling to my destination. I never make it to my destination if I'm pulling over to address everybody that looks at my car. Even if I'm accepting compliments, I can't pull over and say, "Oh, you like my car?" If I did that on the way to my destination, I would never make it there.
Mm.
And I apply that same rule to the different things that I come. Sometimes I post the hate because it's important for me to let people know, hey, this is out there. Depending on how it comes, jealousy, stuff like that. I really don't, address that. But when
I'm
somebody
specifically,
hates,
do you know the Twitter I'm talking about? The one that you
I
posted a
post,
couple of days ago where he said, you're
yeah,
better off in jail.
yes. So the reason I shared that is because by looking at my social media, you see all the things that I'm into. I think I'm making the world a better place, and I don't care who you are. I don't think you can think anything different. So for him to say what he said lets me know that what I'm doing, he has a problem with. He has a problem with me trying to make the community better. He has a problem with me trying to make the justice system better. You follow me? I don't attack anybody personally. I think I got the type of mouth that if I wanted to tear people apart, I think I probably can build a pretty successful career. Really, ripping people apart. I think I can do that, and I think a lot of people will probably support that. But I don't use myself in that way. So for him to, take that position, it was like wow. So I wanted to share with everybody, like, this is the thinking that's out there. You got a lot of people that um, wish I was in prison so that I wouldn't be out here waking people up.
Doing what they can't do, and that's the thing is I receive a lot of hate, and it's refreshing to me. I even made an episode, how to deal with your haters, because knowing that I have people hating on me is knowing that I'm doing things the right way. You know what I mean? That I'm doing things the right way because I understand envy. I understand jealousy. And when you're coming at me with something that has no facts, it's just an emotional statement like you're better off in jail, that's, to me, is just hate. You know, it's just hate. So to me, it's refreshing because I'm like, dang, man, I'm doing the right thing, and it's pissing people off because one thing, Marvin, you're a man of history. I know that you are. What has happened to truth tellers throughout history?
Well, especially in the face of, environments that their truth threatens the integrity of that environment. Those truth tellers have been sacrificed. They have been murdered. They have been
Outcasted.
outcast. They have been their character assassinated. There's no easy path for someone that's willing to speak truth to power. There's no easy path. So if you desire to do the right thing in this world, just know that you're going to have to accept that coming in, that, the people that know you are not going to help you. The people that should support you is not going to support you. The community that you come from are not going to get behind you the way that you think they should. It's going to be people that you don't know. It's going to be other cities going to get behind you. It's going to be people that you don't know that's going to support you, but you're going to experience opposition. The more truth you tell, because truth is judgment. When you tell somebody the truth, you're putting them at a crossroad to where they have to accept that truth and change, or deny that truth and continue along the path that they're on. So when you confront somebody with truth, you're actually threatening the direction that their life is going. You set yourself up as opposition by being a truth teller, but you have to be willing to even change yourself when you're telling somebody else the truth. Because judgment, when you speak truth, you're judging the situation, but you're judging yourself at the same time too.
Well, that's the truth. That's the truth. When somebody's speaking the truth, they're speaking of the truth of themselves, and it resonates, as you said, through our actions. It's like you said that you feel like you're making the world a better place, and how you're doing that, partner, is again through self. This is again what I want all my listeners and everybody to understand. When people say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Be a better person. Because by you being a better person, you're making the world a better place. It's just that simple. So that's why I recognize the errors of my way. I recognize the manipulative ways I looked at life, the narcissism within me. I've recognized so many of my materialistic ways that I'm cognizant of most of them throughout my day. So at the end of the day, when I sit back and I reflect, you know what, man, I was at 7-Eleven. I always use this example, but I was at 7-Eleven and I knew somebody was coming in behind me and I purposely didn't hold the door for them. I reflect on things like that. You know what I mean? Because I knew that I could have been a better person in that moment. And it's the little things like that is what makes our world a better place.
Right. And when you look at it, even the consequences of it, when you do an act of kindness or positivity, you may save somebody's life that you come in contact with. You don't know what they deal with. You don't know what they're carrying, and just the thought of of what you've done to impact their life in a very small way. It may be insignificant to you, but it may be the thing that saves somebody from committing suicide, or save somebody from going into their house with an attitude.
Anything.
Anything.
And this is my reason in giving. If I have, and I don't have much, you know what I mean? But if I have $2 sitting in my center console and I see a homeless person on the side of the road and I give this person these $2, right? I'm not thinking about whether I'm going to give this $2 to this man because, they're going to just go buy some dope. They're just going to go buy some alcohol. It's not my concern. My concern is just giving. I have it here. It's sitting there in my center console, and I'm giving it to this person because maybe that drink will save their life. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not up to me to decide what this person should do with this $2 that I'm giving it, because then I'm not giving from the heart. I'm giving with intention. So it's just like you just said, it's just the act of giving. You know what I mean? And being in that and knowing that it's going to come back to you every time. I got to a point to where I'm like, dang, my subscriptions is growing slow. I don't even really know if my programs are really even that good. I'm seeing, these other channels and they're blowing up. They're 10, 15,000 subs growing and all of these things. And I started doubting my message. But within a couple of days, homie, no lie, I just started getting an onslaught of positive reaffirmations from people all over the place. Just, man, we love what you're doing. We appreciate just an onslaught that reaffirmed what I was doing. And it was all because I started doubting myself. But again, I still had faith. I knew that I was doing the right thing. And the point of that is, even when we get in solitary confinement and you're sitting there and you're by yourself for 2 months and no interaction, and you start to just really doubt whether life is worth living, things come your way, whether you recognize them or not, just to show you like, hey, man, just have faith in yourself. You went through 20 years of prison, innocent. Hell, I went through 13 years guilty of selling drugs, not what they say, but guilty of being that type of person, and that shit was hard on me, man. After 5 years, I'm like, man, I still got another 13 to go. Like, what the frig did I get into, man? You did 20 years, innocent.
Yeah, on a natural life sentence without the possibility of parole. So, I didn't know it was going to take 20 years to establish and prove my innocence. I didn't know it was going to take 20 years. But I always knew that I wasn't going to be in prison for the rest of my life.
Me too. I knew I wasn't going to do all that time. I got out on the 2 levels when Obama was leaving, when he came with the 2 levels for first-time nonviolent drug offenders. So it knocked 4 years off me. And the way that happened, homie, was a blessing in itself, because I got that news on my mother's birthday, right? December 9th.
So when you got that news, I remember sitting in a prison cell watching the news when it happened. So, I'm still in the midst. And I remember being so happy and excited because I knew the lives that it was going to change.
You have no idea. Homie, you have no idea.
With those numbers, I said, it's a lot of conscious people that's about to get out of prison at one time. It's about to be an influx of consciousness into the communities. The community need this. Now a lot of people probably wasn't looking at it like that. But that was my initial thought.
So I'll share the story with you. So the 2 levels came out, and I was already in the midst of getting a commutation. I've already spoken with the pardon attorney out of DC. She said that that she's already reviewed my case. I was a shoo-in for the commutation. And that I should have never got that much time. The only reason why I got that much time was because I went to trial and such. I mean, the kingpin in my case got 8 years. He went from life down to 8 years. That's how many people he told on. But it was a day I was on my way to the weight pile, man. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I go from 8 to 10 every day. And my case manager was crossing me on the path named Tyson. And he said, Harold, he said, when you get back in, come see me. So I'm like, okay, I'm thinking this has something to do with the commutation or whatever. So I go work out, blah, blah, blah. But I'm anxious to get back in. So I come back in, shower, I go sit down in his office. Now, mind you, like I say, it's December 9th. It's my mother's birthday. And I haven't called her yet. So I'm sitting in his office and I'm like, Tyson, what's up? So he's like, man, I got some bad news and I got some good news. He said, what you want to hear first? I said, well, you know me, Tyson. Let's start with the bad first and get that out of the way. So he's like, well, the bad news is you got denied for your commutation. I said, what you mean I got denied? I said, I just talked to the lady 2 weeks ago. She said I was a shoo-in. What you mean now I'm getting heated because, again, as you know, I know that you know, there's so many highs and lows in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You get to think that, man, I got these people and they got to let me go. And then they come back and shoot you down in a paragraph. You know what I mean? So there was so many of those. And this here, I was, like you say, on guard against good news. Like, man, I'll believe it when these people let me out this gate. That's the point that I'm at. I don't believe nothing you say till you let me out of this gate and got me on the bus home. But I was so believing. So when he hit me with that, it devastated me, and he's like, well, he said, but this is the good news. He said, the good news is I went ahead and filed for your 2 levels. Right. And he said, that is the reason why they denied your commutation, because they granted the 2 levels. So I'm like, okay, well, I knew about the 2 levels, but I didn't deal with it because I knew I had the commutation going. If the commutation didn't work, then I knew I could fall back on the 2 levels at that time. That's why I didn't mess with it. But he went ahead and filed it. Right. And not only did he file that, but he filed my halfway house and got me 9 months halfway house. So he tells me, now I still got 4 years left on my sentence, homie, and I'm tired. Right. I left my daughter at 6 months old. And the life her mother made my prison time hell. You know what I mean? With my daughter. And I couldn't, my daughter's turning 12 now, and I'm seeing her. She's skipping school. Her life is going downhill. And I'm sitting in prison like, how the fuck am I going to save my daughter? I still got 4 years. She's going to be 18 by the time I get home. I can't reach her at 18. This is what I'm going through, all of this. So he turns the computer to me. He says, you go home in 90 days. Man, I started crying. I said, Tyson, do not play with my fucking emotions, Tyson. Tyson, don't play with my emotions, Tyson. What do you mean I go home in 90 days? So he explained it to me. He's like, I got you 9 months halfway house. He said, you leave March 16th. I said, Tyson, man. I said, you know what today is, man? He's like, what? I say, it's my mom's birthday. I'm going to go call my mom and wish her a happy birthday, dog. And that was it. And I went home. And I came home. And my daughter was failing. I came home March. She had 2 months left, and she was going to fail. I got with the school. I got with the guidance counselor. I explained to them the whole situation, explained to them that I was home just to pass her, and I'll take it from there. They passed her. The next year, she was on honor roll the whole year because I promised the school. I promised the school that she would change. She was going into 8th grade. I said, she's going to give you, I promise you, that's my word. So that whole 8th grade, she was honor roll. I got her into swimming, right? She became a competitive swimmer in the high school, honor roll all through high school. Didn't miss one day of high school, and it just changed her life, having her father back in her life. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you have children, yes?
Yes.
And that dynamic in itself is a whole nother conversation that I would love to have with you at another time, or just about how that relationship is going. But as a parent, an innocent person in prison with children, the impact of you coming home on them children already, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what kind of impact has that been? Like, in these young people, how old are they?
Well, my daughter, she's 23. Okay. I have a daughter, she's 23. And, we were able to maintain a pretty tight relationship the entire time that I was incarcerated. But you don't know how well you don't know a person until you're around them more than 15 minutes of phone call. I was limited to 15-minute phone calls, and, I might call back 3 times, but when you're around somebody and able to see, really see them, you like, wow, I thought I knew you.
Mm-hmm.
But my daughter, she's great. She's an entrepreneur. She's actually in the process of starting her second business. Um, we still talk and text nearly every day. I took her out on a date day before yesterday. So it's great. She's so much better than me. She's so much smarter than me. Um, at 23 years old, I couldn't hold a match to her, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Well, Marvin, man, this has been a great discussion, man. And I'm thankful that you're home, man. I'm thankful that we have a conscious man back home. And I do appreciate what you've been through, because I appreciate what I've been through, and the fact that it created what it created. And I'm a firm believer that I went through what I went through to provide the messages that I do now, because I wouldn't be able to articulate in the fashion that I do without those experiences, and maybe this is what God had for me, and maybe it's what he had for you. It's just understanding, like I say, our culpability and our actions every day. When something goes wrong, just not be so quick to blame somebody else, but just ask ourselves, like, what did I do wrong here? Just always start with self. Check self first. This is always my message. And make sure that we understand, we the people, understand that we are being led to make emotional decisions day in and day out, with the distractions of football, basketball, sports, competition, constantly competing with your neighbors, your coworkers, just constant competition, constant emotions, constant reaction to these emotions is what's leading us into killing our coworkers, killing our wives, beating our women, beating our men, beating our children. Just constant reaction to the emotions that we're being placed in. So before we make a decision, just stop and ask ourselves, is this an emotional decision or is this a rational decision? And let's take back our country. Let's figure out how, as Mr. Marvin has, as I have, both coming from prison, right? I don't know what you had coming home, but I didn't have anything. I built all of this by myself. And I keep saying that so people understand that they can do this too. They can stand up in their community and build a small little podcast or a channel for a community outreach for your community. If you have issues in your community, build an outreach, start something, do something to gather people, make them stronger, and help understand that don't hate this man. Don't hate me because of the mistakes that I've made, but understand that I have had issues. I've had trauma. I have issues and I need help. And let's help one another be a strong community so that we can take back our country with unity. Number empowers. Nobody knows that like a prisoner, No number empowers. So Marvin, thank you, man. And God bless you, partner, for the things that you've been through. God bless you for the strength that you have, and God bless you for the consciousness that you allowed yourself to come into, going through what you went through. You could have came home and been a stone cold killer, like, man, bump that. You guys took my life. Now I'm taking lives. But you chose to be who you are today, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, I like to say I'm better, not broken. That's why I named my company Better Not Broken LLC.
Beautiful.
So people can find me www.betternotbrokenllc.org, or on Facebook, Marvin Cotton Jr., or just the same Twitter handle as well.
Absolutely, man. So you take care. Many blessings to you, man. And I hope that the rest of your life is as prosperous as can be. Man, you don't deserve to have to lift a finger for nothing. Sit home and relax and enjoy yourself, partner.
Absolutely. And I make my way down to Florida. I make sure that I reach out to you first.
No question, man. No question. Tampa, Champion Bay. I'll take you around. We'll hang out, do what we do, man. And I got some ideas, man. I really got some ideas that I want to share with the right people, because I know it's going to make an impact on our children. So I'm working over here too, man. I'm working down here in the bottom and just formulating things, and you're doing what you're doing. And I got people in New York doing what they're doing. And hopefully one day here soon, we can bring all of these organizations together and just make one powerful unit, man, that just is not to be jacked with. You know what I'm saying? So take care of yourself, Marvin.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you for being on, and I appreciate you, and just keep doing what you do, partner.
Yes, sir.